Welcome. So today I am going to be talking to you about the basics of bike commuting. I don't know if you've all here because you're considering trying riding a bike at least maybe once a week or something like that to get yourself to your place of employment. And I'm here to encourage you to do just that. My name is Irene and I am a member of Quincycles. We are an all-volunteer run nonprofit here in Quincy, working to make the city a better place for biking for everyone who lives here or bikes here. And we've been here doing this for 10 years and we've seen some really great changes in the city and we look forward to many more. Bike commuting is one of those things that can get people really excited. People who bike commute love their commutes. It's a really interesting phenomenon. And you're here, or you're watching this, and you have some sort of interest in it. So I'm going to briefly talk about what are the reasons why bike commuting is something you might want to try if you're just hesitant a little bit. And then we're going to talk about what kind of gear you might need or want to have to facilitate your bike commute. We're going to talk about getting your bike ready and getting you ready to bike, and then also how to plan a route that is best for you. So your route will be yours specifically, and there are many ways to get where you want to go and many multimodal paths to incorporate biking into. So why commute by bike? Well, bicycle commuters are the happiest commuters, and I will shout that from the rooftops. Biking brings you joy. Do you remember the first time you rode a bike? What was the word that you associated with that? Yeah.
Long commute bike ride?
No, the very first time you rode a bike by yourself, like on your own. Or when you're riding, what are the words, like what do you associate, the feelings you associate with riding?
It's kind of a very satisfying feeling in the sense, I mean, one was fitness conscious, another is I needed some mechanism to transport my family share one car.
Oh, great, yeah. So
I need an alternative mechanism.
Awesome.
Apart from kind of having another car or another something.
Right, so instead of getting a second car, you got a bike, and it gives you that independence and flexibility that you need. Yeah, I remember when I first rode a bike and just feeling so free. Like I had the world ahead of me. So I feel like bike commuters are the happiest commuters because it goes back into that feeling of freedom and excitement and flexibility and openness. And it's not just me. There has been research. A study, at least one, has been done, and it shows that the happiest commuters are bike commuters. So why else would you want to choose to bike commute? Well, you can stay more in control of your own time when you're bike commuting. So I know everybody's heard about the MBTA and its troubles. We have a lot of things going wrong that are getting righted, which is great, but it's going to take some time. And in the meantime, our commute times are a little less dependable if we're riding on the train. And when everybody else chooses to drive and you are also a driver, you have a little less control over how much that traffic congestion is going to delay you. But if you're on a bike, you are in charge of your time. There's less congestion ahead of you, and there is more consistency in the reliability of your transportation. It's in your control. You can choose to ride a bike to work because it'll save you money, right? Especially these days, you don't have to pay for parking or parking tickets. You don't have to pay for the skyrocketing cost of gas, at least as much, right? If you take a day a week to ride your bike to work, that's one less day that you're paying for gas to get you where you need to go. You can lower your carbon footprint. We're all talking about climate change and climate mitigation. It's getting a little more real these days, at least to me. And I love my planet, and I hope you do too. And biking is a way to mitigate the impacts of climate change and lower our carbon production. And then another reason is you can incorporate your workout into your day. If you're spending an hour in the gym before work or an hour in the gym after work, you can, instead of being exhausted, you can be invigorated by your actual commute. So the more you can incorporate your physical activity into your day, whether it's you choose to take the stairs instead of the elevator, whether you park farther away from the store that you're going to, or whether you decide to bike or walk where you need to go. All of those are ways to incorporate physical activity into your day, which can be a healthier, more consistent option. And then there's also more potential for social interaction. I always feel like when I'm on my bike, I am in the world, not protected from the world. So when I'm on my bike, I can hang out with my friends and my bicycling group, Quincycles. We lead rides all the time, twice a month on Saturdays and every Monday except for holidays. We lead rides around our city, getting people comfortable riding their bike on our roads and showing them the ways to get around that are a little less stressful. And sometimes challenging ourselves to ride over the biggest hills in Quincy. But even if you're just on your commute, you're able to interact with the world around you in a way that driving a car just doesn't do. So those are the reasons to try bike commuting. And now I'm going to get more into the logistics of how. How do you do it? What do you need? What are your questions about it? So hopefully I address most of them today. If not, you can always feel free to email me. I'll have my email at the end and ask any questions you might have. So the first thing you need to bike commute is a bike. What is the best bike that you could have to bike commute with? Well, it is the bike that you already own, ideally, right? If you have a bike in your garage, in your basement, in working order, that is the bike you should use. You don't need a special bike to go out and start bike commuting. Honestly, the best thing to do is just try it on what you have. And ideally, it is a bike that fits, right? If you've been riding this bike in your basement, in your closet, and you finish your ride and you're sore, something needs to change in the bike, not in you. Unless it's just saddle sore. If you haven't ridden for a while, your butt's gonna hurt. That just happens. You get used to it after a while. You need to ride more consistently. But if you're feeling aches and pains in your shoulders or in your hands, there can be tweaks that can be done to your bike, switching out handlebars, changing a seat angle, take it to a shop, talk to the people there, and have them adjust your bike for you. Your biking should be comfortable. You should not be uncomfortable riding a bike. So the bike you have that is in working order, make sure you get it tuned up if you haven't ridden in a while, and a bike that fits. And a bike with lights. Most commuters travel earlier in the day or later in the evening, right? So unless you have a flexible schedule, you are going to be riding at times where it might be a little difficult lighting-wise for people to see you. And legally, you are required to have a white light on the front a half an hour after sunset and a half an hour before sunrise, in addition to a red light or rear reflector on the back of your bike. And if you don't have pedals with reflectors, I highly recommend having leg bands that are like this. They're dual purpose. They are reflective, but they also, I'll talk about this a little later, when you put them around your pant leg, they keep your pant legs from getting caught up in your chain or getting grease on them, which is never fun. So really great tool for visibility as well as clothing protection. And then also you might want to consider getting fenders depending on whether you plan to ride in all weather or even if you plan to ride in just fair weather but might get caught in the rain. Fenders are super helpful because although this is fun as a kid, making a skunk stripe up your back with the mud puddles, it's not really fun to show up for your 9 a.m. meeting that way. So please consider getting fenders as your first accessory. But again, you don't need them right away. If your bike doesn't have them, you don't need fenders to start bike commuting, but it might be an accessory to consider in the future. I would be remiss if I did not talk about electric bicycles, the newest thing, the most exciting thing that is changing the way people get around. Electric bicycles make hills into molehills and make distances into walks in the park. So if you have access to an e-bike, you might want to consider which classification of e-bike you have. So just recently, the state legislature sent a transportation bond bill to Governor Baker, and they did clarify 2 classes of electric bikes. There are 3 classes in other states, but Massachusetts has decided that 2 are going to be legally defined as of right now, as long as Governor Baker signs the bill. The first one is the Class 1 e-bike, and that is a pedal assist only. So the assistance only happens if you are actively pedaling, and it will stop assisting you once your bike reaches a speed of 20 miles per hour. Class 2 has pedal assist and a throttle assist. So a throttle assist will allow you to make the bike go without actually pedaling. And that class also stops assisting you at 20 miles per hour. The third class, class 3, which is legally defined in other states, but not here in Massachusetts right now, is pedal assist only, like class 1, but it will assist you up to 28 miles per hour. What's great about the classification and having these defined in the law is that bike share systems like Blue Bikes or the Connecticut River Valley bike share system can start incorporating the type of class e-bikes that are appropriate for their region into their fleets. So it will make bike sharing more accessible and also help municipalities regulate where they allow certain classes of electric bikes and where they disallow others. So if you have an e-bike, now you know, hopefully, which class of e-bike you have, and then you can pay attention to regulations as they move forward and make sure that you are in compliance. So you have a bike that works, and now you think, I have to carry stuff. How do I do that? I have to bring my work bag, my laptop, my computer, I have to bring a change of clothes. Oh my gosh, there's so much to bring. Well, let's talk about how you can carry it. This particular bike is called a Bakfiets. It has a cargo space in the front. I wouldn't recommend it for daily commuting. This thing is heavy. You could put an electric motor on it, but it would still be a very heavy bike. Looks like they're kitted out for a day at the beach or camping even. You have other more accessible options. The first one being whatever you actually already carry your stuff in. So do you have a messenger bag? Do you have a backpack that you carry all of your things in? You can use that on your bike. There are some drawbacks to using a backpack. Your back might get a little sweaty. If it's really heavy, big backpack, you might feel a little top heavy. It's not impossible. But again, if you're just starting out, use what you have first. Don't start investing in a bunch of crazy gear before you find out whether you really enjoy bike commuting. So a backpack or a messenger bag would be the first step. And then if you are able, or you already have, or want to invest in something, you can start thinking about ways to have your bike carry your things. So in this option, I have a lot of front basket examples. The two on the right side, my right side, your left side, just hook right onto the handlebars, either with a clamp that you put on and it snaps into, or with hooks that just hook right on. That might be the easiest way. Baskets tend to make the steering of your bike a little heavy, and so they require a little bit of adjustment when you're riding to compensate for the additional weight that you're moving around. But it's not hard. You'll get used to it pretty quick. Your other options are to install a front rack, which is a metal frame that connects to the axle. You can see it under that middle bike there, and then the basket rests on that. This particular one has a basket built into a rack, and then this one has a rear rack with a basket bag sort of mechanism on top. I can show you over here. I have a folding bike that has a front basket that clips onto it, so it's very, very similar to that. And when I get where I'm going, you can just take it right off, and it clips on when I go and clips off when I come back. So that's a very flexible option for a front system. And there are also rear carrying systems. So these are a little preferable if you're worried about that weight being thrown around. What you need to do if your bike doesn't have one is to install a rear rack. This bike has a rear rack here, and then you can get what are called panniers. You can also just bungee. A lot of people sometimes put a milk crate on the back and then throw everything in and tie it up with a bungee cord. But I like to use what are called panniers, P-A-N-N-I-E-R-S, and they are bags designed specifically for clamping onto a rack like this. So you'll notice this has a little clamping mechanism that will lock the bag onto the rack so that it won't fall off when you go over a bump or are riding. They are often foldable. So when you're not carrying something, you can fold it up nice and snug like that, and then when you need to carry something, you can release the straps, and it will open up, and you can carry whatever you need. This particular one is a grocery bag style. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. It looks a lot like a brown paper bag. Holds a lot of stuff if you want to use it. Then there's another kind that is a little more like a messenger bag style. Again, it has a clamp system. This one also has a hook on the bottom, but it clamps right onto the rack and allows you to not lose your things. And then when you take it off, you can carry the straps just like a tote bag. There's also these great covers, because this looks a little rough and uncomfortable if it rubs against your back, so you can cover those up with these flaps that a lot of panniers have that are designed to make it a little smoother and more comfortable to use when it's not actually on your bike. So those are some carrying systems that you can think of. Start with the basics, whatever you already have, and then as you either get more into bike commuting or want to make modifications to your bike or are considering buying a new bike, these are things that you can consider that will take the weight off of you and let it be on your bike and make it a little more comfortable of a ride for you. So you can carry everything with you. This bike has a front rack and a rear rack, or you can also carry nothing with you on the days that you bike. You could plan ahead and say, I'm driving on Tuesday, but I'm going to bike on Wednesday, and bring all the stuff that you need for getting ready for work and for your work day on Wednesday, and leave it at the office on Tuesday. Bike in on Wednesday, bike home on Wednesday, and then drive in on Tuesday and pick up all the stuff that you needed Wednesday and bring it home. So there's a lot of options that you can mix and match and play with. When you are ready to bike, the League of American Bicyclists Smart Cycling Curriculum, which I teach as a League certified instructor, recommends that before every ride, you do what is called an ABC Quick Check. The ABC Quick Check is the way that you make sure your bike is ready to ride before you go, and that the safety components that you need are ready and going to function for you properly. Doing it before every ride gets you familiar with your bike and allows you to start to see when things are shifting and changing about your bike. When are your brake pads wearing out? When are you, when is your chain getting a little too dried out and needs to be lubed? So if you're paying attention to those things in every ride, then you're going to be able to be proactive and take care of your bike a little better. So the first thing is air. You want to check your tires by squeezing them and seeing if they are inflated to a nice firm pressure. If you don't know what pressure to inflate your tires to, it will tell you on the side wall of your tire. It will say inflate to a certain number PSI, or it'll say maximum pressure something or other PSI. Road bikes tend to have a higher air pressure, usually above 100 pounds per square inch. A hybrid bike or a mountain bike will have a lower one, usually between 65 and 85. And that range is important. You want to make sure that you're keeping your bike air pressure in that range. It prevents the most common type of flat tire occurrence, which is a pinch flat. If your tire is really squishy and you go over a bump and it squishes the tire hard, the rim of your bicycle wheel can bite through the tube inside your tire and make two holes, a really unfortunate and unpleasant type of flat to try and fix. So prevention is key in that one. It won't prevent every flat. There are occasionally thorns and nails on the road and glass, but inflating will prevent that most common one, the pinch flat. So once you've inflated your tires to the proper pressure, you want to check your brakes. So you can push your bike forward and check your front brake, which is always the left hand, and then roll it back and check your rear brake, which is always your right hand, and make sure that they're working. The levers for your brakes should come in cleanly and release smoothly. If you can't fit a thumb in between your handlebar and the brake lever, if it comes in so far that it's less than an inch or really tight and you can't get your thumb in there, there are a couple of things you can do. One is adjust the barrel adjusters, which are found usually right here on the where the brake lever meets the cable. There's usually a thing there that you can twist. It's a little clearer on my bike over here, on this bike over here. So there's a little dial. It looks like a barrel. That's why it's called a barrel adjuster. And if you loosen that and move it away from the brake lever, it will tighten the cable, and you can see it. It'll move your brake pads a little closer to the rim. It is a fine tuner, but it can help extend the life of your brake pads and help even out that engagement of the brake levers. If they're getting squishy and you've let out that barrel adjuster all the way, make sure you take your bike in, get those brake pads replaced. Either do it yourself or take it to your local bike shop and have them do it. You want to be able to stop your bike. C is for a lot of things on a bike. Most important you want to check regularly is your chain. This particular commuting bike has a fancy belt drive instead of a chain, so I'm going to show you on mine. And that's to help keep it having less maintenance. So if you're checking your chain, you just want to backpedal your bike and watch the chain move. You're checking for rust spots, you're checking for kinks in it if it's rusted enough that it's getting a little stiff, and you just want to make sure that it runs smoothly. Your bike will tell you when it needs to be lubed. It gets really loud, it gets a little stiff. You'll get a sense if it starts talking to you. I'm sure you've heard a rusty chain talking to you either from your own bike or someone else's. And what you want to do then is wipe it down with a rag and put a drop of lube on each of the round links in between the sides. So each link gets a drop of lube. Run it through for a little bit by backpedaling, let it soak in. On hot days it'll soak in quicker, on cold days it'll take a little longer. And then once it's soaked in, you can just take another rag and wipe off the excess. You don't want to leave a lot of excess lube on your bike because it'll just pick up grit and dirt and then damage your chain. But if you wipe off that extra, you'll feel the positive difference in how your drivetrain is functioning. So in terms of the other C's, your cranks are the arms that come through the bottom bracket and connect to your pedals. So if those are wobbly at all, I've had that happen to me only once. In all my teaching, someone showed up with a bike that they got out of a dumpster and that bottom bracket was really loose. So if that's happening, definitely take it to a bike shop. And they should only move forward and back in the circular motion. They should not woggle in and out from the bike. You might check your cables and see how they're doing. If they're not all enclosed, sometimes a road bike will have an enclosed casing and then it will have a clear cable and then the casing starts again. Just have a look at it, see if it's rusty, if the ends of the cables are starting to fray. And your cassette, this bike again has a belt drive and internal gears. This bike has a miniature cassette, has 2 external gears, so you just want to check those gears on the back of on the rear wheel and make sure that they're looking squared off. If they're starting to look like shark's teeth, your chain is a little old and needs to be replaced. Ideally, you want to do that regularly before it impacts the cassette, because enough damage to the cogs on the cassette gears can cause your chain to slip and you can have trouble shifting. So checking that out and making sure that everything is working and functioning in your drivetrain system. That's primarily what the C is for. Quick is for quick releases. So bikes these days have a quick release axle. It allows you to easily release your wheel should you need to change the tire. And sometimes you have them on the seat post as well, so you can adjust the seat height. And what you want to do is make sure that they are closed. They look very similar when they're open and when they're closed. So if this lever is open, it will say open on the side facing me. And you can see it looks very similar. I don't know if the camera can pick that up, but it looks very similar to what it does when it is closed. And, but it does say closed on the side that is facing you when it is nice and tight. So again, you don't want to lose your wheel while you're starting out on your ride, so make sure your quick releases are closed. And in the first 5 minutes of your ride, listen to your bike. Are there any loose things rattling around? That would be the check part. Just try your shifting gears a little bit, make sure everything is working smoothly the way you would expect it to. Normally it takes about 30 seconds to do this quick little check. I'll demonstrate it really fast. So you check your front tire, check your rear tire, and you check your brakes, front brake, rear brake, and then you backpedal, checking your chain and your quick releases. Front one, and I have a bolt on this one, so I don't even have a rear quick release on this bike to check. But if you don't find any troubles, then you're good to go on your ride as quick as that. And if you do find anything that needs some attention, you will be safer for having done it. So another thing you want to consider when you're biking, whether it's for commuting or just going on a ride on a path or in your neighborhood, is to have what you need to fix your bike should something go wrong. So, or a plan to deal with a situation should something go wrong. And the most common thing that's going to go wrong is that you get a flat tire, right? So you pick up some glass on the road and it works its way in your tire and punctures your tube. So what you want to bring with you is a kit that has tire levers and a replacement tube. And there are different ways you can carry these things. This is an underseat bag. It clamps right underneath here like that. And you can fit everything you need in here: tire patch kit, and a tube, and the tire levers that you would need to get your tire off. They come usually in sets of 2 or 3. So if you have all those things with you, you should be able to fix a flat tire should it come. If you don't have the knowledge to fix a flat tire, I recommend you learn it if you have the opportunity. YouTube is great. Quincycle also does some classes on basic maintenance. But you also have other options. If you're a AAA member, you can call AAA and get your bike towed. Or you can have a plan B to lock your bike up and come back and get it later. You can pay attention to when we're planning your route, that you know where transit options are for you, and you can either bring your bike on the bus, or you can lock your bike up and get the bus and come back and get your bike later. So you want to have tire levers, a replacement tube, a patch kit, and a pump. So this is a pump that just snaps right on to your bike frame, but you can also throw all of these things into a pannier or your backpack, right? You don't have to have these fancy things that connect on. You can just have a bag that you put all your tools in that you can easily access at the bottom of your bag. But being prepared is important. My family is very much involved in the Scouts, so we are always thinking, be prepared. So your bike is ready, and you have ways to carry your stuff, and you have prepared yourself should anything go wrong on your ride. You have either the know-how or a plan to deal with it, and now you want to know, what should I wear when I ride? And I like to say that this is a very individual decision. All clothes, in my opinion, are biking clothes. So whatever you feel is appropriate for your ride and for you is appropriate, right? I'm not going to tell you what to wear, but I am going to make some recommendations about how to think about what you're wearing. You want to dress for your last mile, not your first mile. So this is most important, I find, in cooler weather, because we go outside from our nice warm houses and it's like 60 degrees or 55 degrees, and we're like, oh, it's going to be beautiful later. I do want a bike to work. But if you put on too much at the start of your ride, you're going to get overheated really quickly, because biking is a little bit of work, and you're going to generate heat and you're going to get warm. So if you go out to your bike a little cold, just know that you are going to warm up pretty quickly while you're riding. So think about how far your ride is. If you're only riding a mile, you probably want to dress warm, because you're not going to be working hard enough to get that, generate that internal heat. But if you have a 5 to 10 mile ride, definitely start your ride out a little cold, so that you don't get overheated and have to stop and take off layers and be sweaty. So yeah, just think about how long your ride is and what's appropriate for you. Are you going to wear Lycra, or are you going to wear the clothes that you're going to work in? Again, it depends on you. If you have a casual, relaxed 2 to 3 mile ride to get to work, wear what you just are going to show up and work in. If you are training for a triathlon or the Pan Mass ride, and you want to make your commute part of your training regimen, so you're going to be riding really fast and maybe throwing in some extra miles, absolutely, put on your biking Lycra. Figure out what's going to work for you. And biggest recommendation is if you are wearing everyday clothing, please remember to keep your clothing out of your bike chain. So if you're wearing pants, use a leg band to keep them out of your chain. If you're wearing a skirt, I love biking in skirts, you might want to consider a skirt guard and a chain guard to keep your skirts out of, from getting grease on them and getting caught in your rear wheel. And be prepared for weather. So this is a big thing. People think that, oh, I can't bike commute because it's going to rain or it's going to be windy, or if you're like me and you bike in the winter, it's going to perhaps snow. But you can. There are ways to be prepared for the weather. I do not recommend carrying an umbrella on a bike. It will compromise your visibility, but it was such a fun photo, I had to include it. There are jackets, lightweight jackets designed specifically for biking that will vent and keep you cool. Bike clothing for rainy days is kind of a balance between, am I going to get wet from the rain, or am I going to be wet because I'm sweating inside my protective gear? So bike-specific rain gear can be better than other kind of rain gear. But you can also, this is one of my kids used this lightweight rain waterproof, water-resistant jacket for a lot of our rides in the rain. You can put your hood on and put your helmet over it so that it keeps your head dry through the vents, but also allows you to keep your helmet visible. And rain pants, again, another option to protect your clothes while you're riding. More recently, we've been trying a rain poncho, like in the picture there. And it's exciting, and it's fun because it works like it keeps the wind moving and the air so you don't get too wet from sweating inside your waterproof clothes, but it does keep you drier from the downpours of the rain on top, and it has some nice reflective details that help you stay visible. There are many brands out there, so I'm not going to particularly recommend any one over any other, but just that these are some of the clothing and tools that you can use to keep yourself comfortable in riding in the rain. You also want to remember to protect your gear. So a lot of panniers come with the option, there it is, of having a rain cover for the pannier. So if it were raining, I can close up my front bag here, and I can put a cover on it that has a vent on the bottom and is bright and reflective and will keep the rain off of my expensive laptop and work supplies. So there are lots of things out there for you to use. And also, if I'm parking my bike outside, I will cover my seat usually. I'm trying to remember where I put my handy, amazingly high-tech seat cover. You should see this, it's pretty impressive. Oh yeah, here it is. It's a shopping bag. So I usually just have these with me and use it to cover my seat when I'm parking my bike. And it's always nice to have a dry saddle when you come out to ride home, even if it's been sprinkling throughout the day. You just want to tie it nice and secure to keep it from blowing away. But yeah, they make fancier, more high-tech seat covers that you can also invest in, but I find that this one works really well. So you are dressing for the last mile, not the first. You've chosen what kind of outfit you're going to wear, you're keeping your clothes out of the bike, and you're prepared for the weather. And the last thing I want to highly recommend is that you remember to wear things that help you stay visible in our transportation system. Being visible is one of what I call the 5 Bs, which are the basic tenets of the smart cycling curriculum. You want to bike ready, which we talked about already with our ABC quick check. You want to be visible, be aware, be predictable, and obey the rules of the road. I'm going to get into a little more detail on that later, but when you're thinking about clothing, think about when you're going to be riding and how you're going to be seen by the people around you. If your commute happens at night, please don't dress all in black. It will just compromise your safety and make the system unsupportive of you as a cyclist. And then please always wear a helmet. You only have one brain. Traumatic brain injury is a life-changing event. I'm going to talk briefly about how to fit your helmet. So you want to make sure that it's just 1 or 2 fingers above your eyebrows, that the straps come in a V around your ears, and that 1 or 2 fingers can fit in here. You should be able to open your chin comfortably, open your jaw comfortably, but you should not be able to slide the strap up over your chin. Please don't ride with your helmet way back here. It's not then protecting the front of your head where you also want protection. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are yourself? Good, how about yourself?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Are you here for bike commuting?
Oh, no, I am wondering where ET is.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, you might have to.
Interesting as well.
Cool, awesome. If you want to stay, please do.
Sure.
Yeah. Also, please note that helmets have a lifespan. After 5 years from their manufacture date, the materials in them have degraded enough that they are no longer going to protect you sufficiently should you need to use your helmet, like in a crash. So there's always a sticker inside the helmet that will tell you the month and year that your helmet was made, and you want to make sure that you make a note. So if you haven't actually used your helmet, meaning you haven't been in a crash with it, you do replace it after 5 years. This particular helmet looks really solid and great, doesn't it? But it was actually in a crash, and if you look closely at it, there are fine cracks in it. Helmets are single-use devices. If you are in a crash and your helmet is used to protect your head, you must replace it with a new helmet. Please remember that. It's like a car seat for your child. If you use your car seat, you need to get a new one, right? So that you are protecting yourself as much as you can. There are helmets out there in all shapes and styles. You should be able to find one that fits you comfortably and that makes you feel fashionable, even though it may not seem like it. So please wear a helmet. If you are under age 16, it is legally required for you to wear a helmet. You've gotten your bike ready, you have all your gear, you know what you're going to do, and now you're thinking, what am I going to do when I get to work? How am I going to be presentable? I am a person who sweats like at the drop of a hat if I even think about working out. So, or I'm a person who, it doesn't matter, I never sweat, I just glisten. I have friends like that. I'm not one of them, I'm the other kind of sweater. I think about exercising and I will gush. So how am I going to get myself presentable when I get to work? Well, you got to know yourself. Which kind of person are you, right? What are your needs? Also know your ride. If you're going to be working really hard on your ride, you're going to need a little more help. So one thing to ask and find out is, does your place of employment have a shower facility available for you? Some places have them with a locker room. That might be something you've never thought about before, so find out what's available to you. And if there isn't a facility in your office or in your place of employment, then maybe there's a gym nearby that you could have a membership. Sometimes offices have a discounted membership with gyms nearby, that you could use their shower and then head into work. That still might not be an option for you, so your best bet might be to leave a little earlier so that you have time to cool off after your ride when you get to work, or to bring shower wipes and deodorant and a change of clothes and freshen yourself up as best you can just in the bathroom. There's lots of options that you can explore, and again, it depends on what your needs are as an individual. We are covering a lot of ground tonight, and again, if you have any questions about anything that you've heard so far, please feel free to reach out to quincycles@gmail.com. But now we're going to move into planning the route that you're going to take to your place of employment. Now, I could make a lot of assumptions. There's people working all over the place, people who work down the street from where they live, people who have to cross 2 bridges to get where they need to work. So when planning your route, I'm just going to make some recommendations about things to think about. If you want to try biking with Quincycles, we do show people how to get around Quincy and how to get onto the Boston side of the Neponset River frequently, so you can try that with us. And it's also exciting to know that in a few years, the Neponset Trail on the north side of the river is going to be extended so that you bypass the off-ramps on Morrissey Boulevard, and then it will let you off on the sidewalk further along Morrissey, close to the Harbor Trail around UMass Boston, that can get you into Boston that way. So there are increasingly more bike paths and bikeways for you to use to get where you need to go. So the first thing that I always recommend is think outside of the route that you use when you drive, because the way that you drive is probably not the best way for you to try biking, especially if you're on the highway, or obviously if you're on the highway. So think outside of that. You can use Google Maps, tell them you're biking. They'll usually make some recommendations. They can even help you avoid the highest hills. But first off, you also want to begin with an achievable distance. So if you're only a few miles from work, you might be able to ride the whole thing right away. But if you're 12 miles, if you work in Cambridge and you live in Braintree, that's a long ride. So maybe you start biking to the train station and then taking the train to work, or you start taking the train to a station that's farther from your work and getting a blue bike from that station and riding the last half of your ride. Or you drive somewhere and park and then bike the rest of the way. So there are lots of ways to make a long commute into something that uses biking but doesn't necessarily challenge you beyond your current abilities. So begin with an achievable distance, and also begin with an achievable frequency. If you guys are anything like me, you decide to start a new activity or try something new, and I jump in whole hog. I want to do it all the time, and I want to do it all the way. And I encourage you to take a step back, take a deep breath, and say, let's start this and build a practice in increments. And so maybe 1 day a week is the best frequency for you right now. Maybe 2, right? Maybe 5 right away. I'm not sure. Everybody's different. So just consider what would be an achievable frequency of bike commuting for you. And then once you've figured out a route using Google Maps and trying things, mapping things out in different ways, try a practice run on the weekend, right? When there's not as much traffic, early in the morning on a Saturday or a Sunday, and just see what it feels like. If it feels achievable to ride all the way into work on that day, then maybe it's achievable on a work day as well. Be open to shifting your route if you try it on a weekday and the traffic conditions are not something that make you comfortable. And it might be fine on the weekend. It might need a little tweak, or one block in a different direction can make all the difference in the comfort of a bike ride, right? So do a practice run, but be open to shifting if you need to. And always get a friend to join you if you can, because the support and encouragement and accountability of having someone biking with you, whether it's just for your practice run or for your commuting, it's a wonderful thing to have the company. And always, like we talked about before, have a plan B. Know where the transit routes are. Know where you have a lock that you can lock your bike up with securely, so that you can hop on transit or take a ride share home, or call a friend who comes to pick you up, or take the day off and just go home. Some days are like that, right? Even in Australia. That's from a children's book that we used to read, The Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. So when you're planning your route, you might want to also consider going multimodal. Bike commutes don't have to be only bike commutes. So the MBTA has rules and restrictions about bringing bikes on their facilities. You can put your bike on the rack on the front of an MBTA bus. All of the buses in Quincy have them. If you need help figuring out how to do that, there's a really great photo essay instruction display on the MBTA Bikes website. So please go check that out. The driver should be able to help you as well, but it is pretty easy. A bike like this can go on the front of the bus, but it cannot go on the bus, and it cannot go on the train during rush hour. So from 7 to 10 a.m. and from 4 to 7 p.m., full-size bikes are not allowed on MBTA trains. However, folding bikes in their folded condition are allowed on the trains at any time. Also, no bikes at all on Green Line. Folding bikes, again, because you can fold them to the size of a moderate suitcase, you can bring those on any of the MBTA facilities. If you are trying to mix a driving commute with a biking commute, there is parkandpedal.org, a website that shows you all the places around the Boston area where you can drive to and park and then ride your bike into the city if that's where you're going or if it's nearby. So the ones that are closest to Quincy are Tenay and Beach and Dorchester, which is wonderful because it's right on the Neponset Trail. Or the Blue Hills Ski Area overflow lot over near the Trailside Museum. That has a couple of park and pedal spots, and also the Martini Playground on Truma Parkway, also on the Neponset Trail. Those are options that are closest to Quincy if you're looking for somewhere to try that car-bike hybrid commute. You can mix it up with blue bikes, as I mentioned before. If you take the train in and just get off in a different stop, it can help you skip the wait time if you're shifting MBTA lines, right? So if you work somewhere on the green line and you ride the red line in and wait for the green line, you can skip that by getting a blue bike and riding your green line portion of your commute with a blue bike. Or if you do the orange line, the orange line is going to be closed for a little while, so trying a blue bike might be a better option. Another one, I'm going to skip number 4 and jump to number 5. I don't know if you can see it, but it says to take the ferry. In the summers in Quincy, there is a ferry that goes into Boston and connects also to Winthrop. Bikes can be taken on the ferry for free, and there are ferries early enough for most commuting hours. So if you want to try that, that would be a lovely way to start your day. Bike over to Squantum Point Park, hop on the ferry, get off in Boston, and then bike the rest of the way to work. I want to talk a little bit about the option of guaranteed rides home with transportation management associations. A lot of offices this is something that you might find out if your office or your place of employment already does, or if they might be interested in joining a transportation management association. And what they do is help companies work with people and manage commutes and balance driving or trying to get people to do active transportation like biking. And one of the concerns, especially if you're a parent or a caregiver, it would be an emergency at home that you need to get home for. And so if your company does work with a transportation management agency, you can get a guaranteed ride home should you need one. If you've biked in that morning and you have a child who gets sick at school and you need to get home fast, they will send you home in a taxi or a ride share, and you can get to your child more efficiently than trying to bike there. So there are lots of support mechanisms out there. You just need to find out if they're available to you, and if not, encourage your company to take them on. And I love this picture because it is the map of all the routes that communities, that convoys are leading into Boston for the annual Bike to Work Day Festival in Boston, usually at City Hall Plaza. This year it was at Downtown Crossing. And you can see people are biking from as far away as Lexington and Needham, and from Quincy. We are all getting to where we need to go by bike in various ways, but there are routes for everybody, and there's a route for you if you want to try biking. Planning for locking your bike. So you may have indoor parking available at your place of work. And if that's so, then great. It might just be a room you can lock your bike in. It might be a space specifically designed for locking bikes. So you want to check into that. If there's not one in your building, there might be secure parking nearby. If there's a parking garage, they may have an area specifically with bike racks for bike parking. So you want to look around and see what's available in the region where you're working. If you do need to park on the street, please be sure to pick a visible and very public location and lock to something that is secure in the ground. I have heard stories of people locking to a signpost only to come back and see their bike gone and to discover that the signpost was not secured into the ground. So all the thief had to do was pull the signpost out, take the bike away, and put the sign back. So just make sure that whatever you're locking to is secure and going to keep your bike safe. And then you want to talk about locking technique. So no lock is 100% theft proof, but what you want to do is make your bike less enticing, less easy to get than the bikes around it. So the best system that you can have is to have a U-lock for your frame, and if it's a little bigger than this one, probably your rear wheel as well, and then use an additional cable lock to extend around and through the front wheel. So a U-lock definitely, and a cable lock extension if you can. And you want to think about locking your bike in one of the two triangles. So you have the triangle here on your frame, and then the rear triangle here on your frame. So you want to lock through those. If you lock around your front wheel, I'm sure you've seen this, a bike rack with a front wheel just left on it, locked to it, and the frame gone. Because of these quick releases, a thief can easily release the front wheel, leave it behind, and take your bike with them. And they only have to get a new front wheel, and now you have to get a whole new frame and all the components. So make sure that you're locking through the frame and trying to secure both wheels. If you have any removable accessories, like a computer that tells you how fast you're going and how far you've gone, or a bike pump, like we've talked about having for fixing flat tires, make sure you just take those off and bring them with you if you're parking in a public space. Ideally in a secure room in your office, that wouldn't be an issue, but please do that. And then I love this picture because it's just a little ridiculous, but it shows, it's just a reminder, don't lock to something as flimsy and insecure like a plant, right? And also you can see that the lock is on the locking, or if that were, say, a signpost instead of a plant, you have the U-lock around that, and then the cable lock maybe around the bike. No, the U-lock should connect the frame of your bike to the secure thing that you're locking to. Again, don't lock just your front wheel because you'll lose your frame. But if you have locked both your frame and one of your wheels with the U-lock, and then use the cable lock to lock the other side of it. That will go a long way to deter a thief, but will not prevent 100% a determined thief. It's a lot of talking. So we're going to talk a little bit about those 5 B's in a little more detail. This one is the OB, the rules of the road. So if you're obeying the rules of the road, you are riding with traffic on the right-hand side of the road. You have to recognize that as a bicyclist, you are a vehicle, and therefore you have the same rights and responsibilities as motor vehicle drivers. And your safety depends on how you comply, right? And the perception of bicyclists depends on how your behavior reflects on all of us. And I know we've all seen drivers who run red lights, and we think, oh, all drivers are terrible. And drivers see bicyclists who run through a stop sign and say, oh, all bicyclists are terrible. But I want to move beyond that and just say it behooves us all to follow the rules as we've laid them out, and work together to make the transportation system as safe as possible for everybody involved in it. So the last one here is to ride in the direction of traffic and use the right-hand-most lane that is suitable for your destination. So if you're making a left turn at the upcoming intersection, you may need to merge into the left lane in order to do that. That's okay. So you would need to merge into the left lane to do that. Another way to handle a left turn, if you're not comfortable doing that, is to go straight through the intersection to the opposite corner and reposition your bike in order to move with the cross traffic. So there are options, but ideally you are working with the system and obeying the laws as we have written them as a community. So the next one is be predictable. And this is, there's a lot of ways to be predictable, your behavior as a rider and your effort to communicate with the people around you. So make your intentions clear, review your hand signals. A lot of people I teach say, oh, I knew those once, so I'm just gonna review them really quickly. If you are riding, you use your left hand. This is a right turn signal. This is a left turn signal. And this is a stop. So right, left, stop. If you use those signals with your left hand, that's the one that's in front of the driver that's right next to you or right behind you, so they'll be more likely to see it. But also you want to make sure that you are checking behind you as you're riding and making eye contact with the people around you. And if you can't take your hand off your handlebars, you are using your voice to communicate around you, whether you're on a path or on the road. Making your behavior predictable by letting people know what you're going to do is super helpful. And also your riding behavior. If you're riding in a straight line, don't swerve in and out between parked cars. Don't jump up on the sidewalk in some areas and cut across and then jump back down in another area. You just want to make sure that your behavior is predictable to the people around you. I know when I'm driving, if there's somebody riding who doesn't quite seem like they're in control of their bike, I get really nervous as a driver around them. But if somebody's riding straight and confidently, I feel safer and more confident in my ability to safely pass them with a minimum of 3 feet of space when it is safe for me to do so. So again, clearly communicating and riding in a predictable manner is going to go far in keeping you safe on the road. Be conspicuous. This isn't a synonym for being visible. You want to be riding where people can see you and wearing bright clothing. We all have a responsibility to make our transportation system safe, and one of the things that you can do to help other people keep you safe is to wear bright clothing. I personally believe the onus is on the operator of the larger, more dangerous vehicle to be aware and more careful around people, but if they can't see you, that's even harder for them to do. So again, have lights on your bike, whether they clip on and are battery charged or USB charged, or whether they're built into your bike with a generator hub in your wheel and wires that keep them running. Make eye contact with the people around you, right? Let the drivers know that you see them and make sure that they see you. We have a lot of distractions in cars these days, so make sure before you make a move that, if you can, that the driver is aware of your presence. I just want to point out in Quincy here, there is an ordinance against riding on the sidewalk. It may not be regularly enforced, but it is something you want to consider. When you go into a new community, finding out what the local regulations are. If you are riding in most other communities in Massachusetts, riding on the sidewalk is allowed outside of business districts, but throughout Massachusetts, you are asked to walk your bike on sidewalks in business districts. That is the state regulation. And you want to be aware, you want to think ahead, right? So the oh yes?
What is the audience in Quincy? Does it permit walking? Riding the bike?
The ordinance in Quincy says bikes are prohibited from sidewalks throughout the whole city. So business districts and residential areas. So that is, it is something to think about when you are making decisions about where you're riding in our city. So thinking ahead, and also if you're riding on the sidewalk in another community, you're a faster moving vehicle, and often drivers pulling out of driveways or parking lots aren't anticipating a fast moving vehicle on the sidewalk. So that in itself can create a potential point of conflict or create a hazard for you. So if you are riding on the sidewalk in another community, make sure you are aware of what's going on and who might be crossing your path, and always yield to the slower traffic. So pedestrians always have the right of way in the roadway space and on the sidewalk. So you are being aware and thinking ahead. This is the last of the 5 B's that we're going to get to, that we're talking about today. So think ahead, anticipate what's going to happen around you. If a driver's waiting to take a left turn, can they see you, right? If there's a pothole ahead of you, have you scanned behind you? Is there space for you to move out into the lane to go around the pothole? Or do you need to slow down and wait for there to be space for you to do so? So being aware of the hazards that are coming up. Railroad tracks aren't usually a hazard here in Quincy. There's a couple locations where you have to be careful of them, but in Boston they can be a much more frequent hazard. So if you do come across railroad tracks in your commute, make sure that you cross them in a perpendicular way. Don't ride along them. Your wheel can slip off them and cause you to fall, or get caught in the grooves beside them and cause you to flip your bike. So make sure that you're watching for hazards. Metal caps on the road, the manhole covers can be slipperier than the asphalt around it, especially if there's been rainy weather. So, and the last thing I want to talk about, because we do have a lot of them in Quincy, are door zone lanes. So this is a bike lane that is placed between a parked vehicle lane and a moving vehicle lane. And you can see here why it's called a door zone lane. If a driver who has just parked their car opens their car door, that door is going to take up a majority of the bike lane. And so I'm very grateful to the bicyclist in Boston who created this image. It shows you a red zone of the bike lane that you probably want to stay out of. A, it puts you right in that path of an opening door, and B, it also hides you from the cars who might be coming out of this street that white Jeep is turning into, right? So you want to stay in the left-hand lane where the image has green. Now I wish all bike lanes had that green and red because it would be really helpful, but they don't. You just have to imagine it in your head. So stay in the left-hand side of a door zone bike lane. It does put you closer to moving traffic, which for some people feels uncomfortable, but moving drivers are paying more attention to what's going on around them, ideally. A driver who has just parked is not necessarily going to look before they open their door. It's more of a hazard for you to be too close to a line of parked cars and risk getting doored than it is, and thrown into the moving traffic, than it is for you to ride alongside a moving vehicle.
This is very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And so if you're a driver and you see a bicyclist and they're hugging the left side of the bike lane, this is why, right? They're trying to keep themselves safe and out of the door zone. They're not just trying to crowd you on the road. So this is our one of our rides. So usually at least once a year we take a ride into Boston. We either take the train in or we go up over the bridge, the Neponset Bridge, and into the city. But I love this view. I love the social aspect of it, and I want to encourage you to take your bikes and ride to work, ride to do your errands, start using your bike as a mode of transportation and not just as recreation if you have the opportunity. I hope some of the information in my presentation has been helpful to you. If you do have any questions about anything I've touched on that I didn't go into enough detail for you, please reach out. My name is Irene, and I get the emails at quincycles@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out with questions. Feel free to visit our website, quincycles.org, to find our schedule of events and rides. We do lead 2 rides on Saturdays, 2 different Saturdays a month, and then Monday nights we have an evening ride that starts at 6 p.m. here in Quincy Center at the Hancock Adams Common. I hope you get out riding on your own, and if you want to, come riding with us. Thank you so much.